the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thanks everyone for coming out tonight. Unfortunately, since we don't have a quorum, we're not able to approve the minutes. Why don't we just go to reports then, recreation report, recreation community programming department.
Sure. By way of September, it was a very busy month for us. We kicked off the month, of course, with the Clemacrone Park grand opening, so I'm sure you guys talked about that at the last meeting. I wasn't here, but it's always a good time to celebrate that, as it was quite an accomplishment. In another month or two, I'll come back to the board. I have like a depiction from the event that, you know, kind of shows the pictures and all the nice things there about the ceremony and the opening, but it was a huge success for us, probably about 2,000 in attendance, although some folks might debate me on that. It's always hard to keep track of who attends the events. And then we had the Fall Harvest and Great Pumpkin Patch event that actually came up on October 1st, so kind of drifting a little bit into October, but more recently. We had probably about 5,000 that attended that event, very, very heavily attended, so huge success for us as well. It was a nice 68, 70 degree day, and it was actually a nice fall day for once, but very warm in the sun, so everybody had a really good time there. I know we're going to talk about some ways to sort of ingress the Willows a little bit differently in the future. There were a lot of jam ups on Darby Paley Road. It was a hot place to be, so a good time there. I think we ended up running out of pumpkins by like 3:30, and water and chips and everything else. So we'll make some adjustments in the future, but all a good problem to have, of course. Then the following weekend, on Saturday the 7th, we ended up having the plaque dedication for Jan Berenstein at Clemacrone Park, which was another great event. Again, can't say thank you enough to Lynn Ellis, of course, for bringing that recognition, acknowledgement to this board and bringing that forward. We had a really great day. Again, I'll show you guys some pictures at an upcoming meeting, but I had the opportunity to play Brother Bear as part of the event, and Tracy was actually the Sister Bear. And we got to engage with everyone and all the kids, and everybody had a great time. And the park was just totally overrun that day. But everybody had a lot of fun celebrating Jan, and still a lot of folks still surprised that she actually hails from Radnor. So very exciting. We've got a lot of great things coming up. We have a new event, two new events actually that are on the docket here for early fall. We have a new partnership with the Girl Scouts, and we're going to be doing what's called a campfire and a sing-along over at the Willows. So that's going to take place on Saturday, October 14th. So I guess coming up next weekend from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock. It's really more geared towards girls that would like to try Girl Scouts, Girl Scouting for the first time. But it's still open to the public, so everyone's welcome. We're going to have s'mores and, as I mentioned, the campfire. So it'll be a nice evening atmosphere with a fire. We also started another new event. You might have seen the flyer at one point in time. It's a mother-daughter tea party event. So a lot of folks asked for more family experiences. So we brought this one together. It actually started as a partnership with the Saturday Club that was on a different type of idea, and then it morphed into this event. And unfortunately, no one else can attend because it is sold out. So we sold out at 110 participants within 48 hours. So it was remarkably popular, and a great partnership with the Saturday Club, which will be great. And then we also have Taste of Britain, who will be providing the tea for the event. So they're part of the partnership as well, and that'll be taking place on November 12th. So we're excited about it, and we'll give you an update, of course, once it gets going. A couple of other updates. The trick-or-treat here at the Township building that we do for the preschoolers will be on Friday, October 27th, all day during business hours. Something that I think is in its 5th or 6th year, so it's been going on for a while, very successful. And then the 40th annual Radnor Run, which will be held on Sunday, October 29th. That's the 5 mile, and you can run it or you can walk it if you'd like. We prefer that you run it to keep it moving along. And then we also have the 1 mile, of course, which you can walk or tradition that we have every year. Then we have the Garrett Hill tree lighting ceremony that'll come up on Sunday, November 26th, and then we have the New York City excursion that'll come up on Saturday, December 2nd. And then we also have Santa's delivery, which will take place on Saturday, December 9th, and then the gift delivery drop-off that takes place here at the Township building will be on Saturday, November 25th. Also, just a couple of other quick things. I don't know if everybody has seen this document in the community, but now this is now the official Township newsletter. It's the Radnor Life and Style. The production manager there is Brian Kuznetsov, and his firm was just awarded that right to be able to have all the Township information be included in there. So I know there's still a lot of documents that are out in circulation that kind of claim themselves to be the Township, newsletter of information, but this is now the official. So that fold-out newspaper that you all used to receive, that one is no longer, and everything Township will now be included in this, including recreation. So we're looking forward to getting a lot of, vibrant press, of course, through this. It's more of a magazine style, so some of our information might be looking a little bit different. And lastly, I could go into some of the park project updates. There's not really a whole lot. Petrie Park had an opportunity to work with Commissioner Nagel, of course, and the neighbors down there. We made some recent improvements. We replaced the park benches, and there was a tabletop, chess tabletop, two-seated table within the park. All had been engulfed with carpenter bees and had holes all through them. So we replaced all of those with a nice new material similar to the benches that are over at Odoricio that we recently replaced. So if you get a chance, stop over and take a look at those. And on Monday night, we got approval for a new piece of equipment called a Weesaw, which is a 4-seated seesaw. So it's a more inclusive, could be like a family collaborative experience, which will actually be in the center of the park. And the neighbors picked it out, so it was all them. I can't take credit for that. That was their idea and their thought, and we got approval Monday night, so that'll be installed. Probably not going to be until November, but it's on its way, and that will round off a lot of the improvements that will be happening at Petrie, and that was per the bond, of course, that was issued back in late 2015. We are still looking at some fencing and crosswalk changes, or additions, I should say, speed hump there on that street as well, and I know some of those changes may be coming down the road too. We're hopefully going to be going to bid soon on Beauconner, Warren Philippone, and Callan with some of the improvements that were proposed there. Also, we're in the process of looking at the designs for the bathrooms for Evelyn Tunnel and the trail entrance at Brookside. So those should be getting underway quickly as well, getting those out to bid. And then, of course, Fenimore is still moving along. I know we're still taking a look at that project, the concept plan, and evaluating how we're going forward there. So look for those all to come back to this board soon with more information. So if you have any questions, I can answer those.
We at our last meeting, we reviewed sort of the staff, yours and the staff's recommendations for the capital improvement budget, I guess. Is there any new status on where that stands, or
the process just started?
Yeah, Monday night we had the first presentation of the Township Manager's recommended budget. So as part of that, I think that's getting rolled out this week to the board. They'll be seeing a lot of that for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So to be determined. I know that information will be included in there, and we'll see where it goes.
Was there any substantive changes to what was presented here that ultimately, I guess, was rolled out by the manager? Okay. All right. You guys have any other questions? All right. Thank you, Tammy. Parks report, Public Works Department. All right. I guess we don't have any school board members, and I don't think EAC or Shade Tree. I know Claire was handling those. John, I don't know if you want to give an update on, I know the Willows was in front of you a little bit this past week.
Yeah, it was a strange conversation. So the next meeting, we're going to talk about the MOU between the Township and the Willows Trust. Is that what it's called?
Willows Preserve.
There is close to $400,000 already in the Willows account.
So it looks like we need a total of 1.7 because they have the $1 million gift. And since we don't have that 1.4 or so, we have to work that into the budget. And it's probably be over a 2-year period.
Well, thanks for giving us an update on that. We don't have any new business, and Tammy just handled our old business, so I guess you guys have anything further, we'll go to public participation.
Fine.
All right, we have some public here, so feel free to participate.
Yes.
And whoever wants to go first.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm Mary Ann Morgan, and I live on Conestoga Road, and I was a teacher at Radnor High School. So, and I've come to talk about, and all of us are here regarding the possibility of allowing our dogs to walk on leash at the new Macron Park. Tony and I were here last week meeting with Tammy, and we met with Bill last week also. Yeah. And so, you know, we have some questions about it. I know that dogs are allowed on leash at the Tennell Park. And I come from the Midwest originally, and at all parks there, dogs are allowed to walk on a leash. We're not asking for dogs to be off leash at all. In fact, I'm totally against it in the parks. Period. I'm against it. I would complain and I'd call about it if I saw dogs running off leash. I just don't approve of that. But there's a beautiful trail there, and it would be really nice if we could be able to do that. And it is odd that one of the parks you're allowed to do it, and yet very close by, a few blocks away, you can't. So we've come to talk about that or ask you some questions about it.
Yeah, and also I'd like to reiterate also, we don't want it to be a dog park.
No.
We want limited hours where dogs can actually go in there and walk the trail. Prohibit from they're not allowed to go into where the children play. This is strictly because what we all have in mind is we would like to go in and walk the trail and maybe take the dogs on leash way back in the corner, like, you know, where the trees are, where the comfort station, I think, is still there.
No,
It's not there, but you know, where it used to be.
Yeah.
And beyond the basketball courts. I don't even know if they're still there.
Yes,
They are
yes,
still
they are.
I've been at the park's opening, but I was in the front, and of course I got to view the beautiful reconfiguration of Clemacrone Park and all the great things for the kids. We're certainly not here to ruin anything for children. It really isn't about that. I know that Tennell Field had restrictions, and those restrictions have now been lifted. However, as a resident and walking down Garrett Avenue, I've seen multiple times those dogs, it's not a dog park, they are off leash and they are running around places where they shouldn't. And as a pedestrian with a dog, a nice dog, dogs have run off the field and towards my dog. And I don't want to be subjected to that. So, you know, I know you lifted the restrictions for that, fine. Dog owners are responsible for their dogs. We are asking limited access with our dogs to the park.
I will say, over the years that I've been on the board here, this is not the first time we heard about dogs in the parks and whatnot. And every time you put in regulations, somebody has to enforce it and so forth and whatnot. You know, one thing that I've heard in the past about people with dog leashes, and it created a problem from the other standpoint of people coming in with retractable leashes, and that you have a leash that will let a dog go out 25 or 30 feet on those retractable leashes, and the person complained, if memory serves me correctly, that the person wasn't taking care of their animal and was running out on that leash and going after their dog and so on. So, you know,
I understand that, but that can happen if you were walking on the sidewalk too.
Sure.
I mean, it can happen anywhere.
I think that's true. I mean, we don't have a quorum, so I mean, we can't make a formal motion on this, and this was a subject of, I know Sarah came by last meeting and was very vocal about it, and there was a lot of discussion about it at the last meeting, so we're not in a position to make a motion on it. I mean, and I appreciate, and I can tell you, I appreciate the proposed restrictions on that. I mean, that's a good step. I can tell you, me personally, and I don't, all my cards on the table, I don't have a dog, never owned a dog, so I don't have, and I like dogs, don't get me wrong, but I mean, my one thing that I thought sort of came out of our last meeting, when we had a little more robust of the board, is this park just got dedicated. At that time, it was a week ago, now it's 5 weeks ago. I think what, may move everybody is just give it a year, I mean, and to see how, just to get everybody, we just have a brand new park, let's just sort of let it continue as is and see how things go. That's just sort of my opinion on it. You guys, if you feel differently, please feel free to
Well,
chime
I'm a dog lover.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
And I would love to have that. I live right off of the Radnor Trail, and I know that's presented problems with dogs there and so on. One of the things is the retractable leashes with people trying to jog on the trail and somebody not bringing. So I guess it brings a whole raft of issues. I've heard, again, over the years, curbing your dog, and we were hoping that people would be responsible dog owners to make sure that they take care. I think that's the biggest downside, I guess, right? And I'm going to speak of people not properly curbing their dog in a brand new park that, I know from Parks and Rec, we don't have the manpower to have someone go out there to police the park to make sure dog feces is cleaned up. You'd hope owners would do that. Sometimes you got irresponsible owners, as you have found out, where they don't leash their dogs, they're running out. Excuse me. So, I know, betwixt and between, I'm not sure. Excuse me.
Can we try it?
Yeah, like a
Have
probationary
some kind of
period.
thing, and then if it doesn't, if people don't clean up.
again, we don't have a board to make a vote. We don't have enough quorum for a motion, and I know the sort of the feeling that came out of the last meeting, we determined a different way, was not to do it at this time. That was that's what came out of the last meeting. I think we've been very fortunate here on the Park and Rec Board. This is by far the most divisive issue that ever comes on our agenda, okay? And
Yes,
when you're on a board where the most divisive issue is whether dogs or not, but everybody loves the dogs, we consider ourselves very fortunate in that. We can't make a recommendation now because we don't have a quorum. I mean, if we had a quorum, my vote would be to allow a period now of keeping it in place. I mean, one thing I don't think I'm saying anything people don't know here. The cops aren't going to stop anybody from walking the dog in there, and that's sort of in the way.
Oh, I did get stopped.
So did I.
By the police.
By the
Yes,
police.
yes, I
We have
didn't
the
know
park.
there were,
We
I
have
walked
park
over
control,
there, yes, I
not
was
for
stopped by the
dogs, but
police.
for another
Twice.
issue.
Twice.
Oh, okay.
So it just happened to be a byproduct of the police
Okay.
being
Yeah, the
there.
bullying.
We had I don't want to say comprehensive, but this issue came up about a review of all the parks in the township and whether to have them be, it was
Were all the parks dog friendly except this one?
That's it. I
Excuse
think
me, I
there's some
didn't get a question.
inconsistency, right?
That's what's the problem.
Well,
Because we keep it.
hold on, hey guys, can we hold on?
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead. I'd like to keep it, I'd
I'm
like
the
to keep it
animal
on
control guy for the township.
I know, but I'd like to just keep it, as everyone talking at once. Go ahead, sir.
If I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've been actually literally patrolling the parks for the last 14 years.
Uh-huh.
Bill, why don't you explain your position?
Yeah, my position is I'm supervisor of parking and auxiliary services for the
Okay.
township.
Okay.
My auxiliary services title is I'm the ordinance enforcement officer for the
Okay.
township. So my responsibilities are parks.
Right.
Now, and I'm going to just give you a perfect example of a park, is the Friends of Radnor Trail Park. I don't know if everybody's been there. Friendly to dogs.
Mm-hmm.
It started out that way.
Right.
So we got complaint after complaint after complaint
Right.
of dogs fighting up there.
Right.
All the time. Going up to the trail, dogs coming off of the trail, running in there, to the point where they literally had to put up a fence in that park. There's a fence. Now, you can't walk on the grass because dogs are going in the park. Hartford Park speaks for itself.
Right.
I could have brought up a box of complaints where dog bites and everything else
Right.
all day long.
Right.
McCrone Park, which I live 2 blocks from, was never a park for dogs. It was a park for, and they actually had a trail back there where you could walk. Was never an issue. Canal didn't let dogs up there either. Now they have, and it gets lax, and like you guys just admitted, the dogs are off leash and they're running down Garrett Avenue, they're running across, they're all over the place. And it really makes me think, and I've been in the Facebook discussions, I talk to, like I said, I live on Bailey, which is right up the street, so I deal with the people that, you know, were big time on Facebook that wanted dogs in the park. Why did we put up the signs? Well, the signs have always been there. Signs were always there forever, as long as I remember, on all those parks. So the dog-friendly parks that are in question is Friends of Radnor Trail, Canal now, which that just happened. I don't-
Canal was though prior, not to interrupt you,
Was it?
but it was, but it had restricted hours. It had restricted hours to when dogs
It had
were allowed.
restrictions, okay.
So, part of what we did was we were cleaning up the signage in the parks.
Right, I remember we discussed
And that's
that.
where, when we took a look at that, and Sarah had come to meeting after meeting of this board and encouraged them to just make it dog-friendly all the time. That way, that would give us a dog-friendly park in Jarrett Hill.
In that area.
And that's what we did when we did that. And then, of course, the natural byproduct was cleaning up the signage. When I say that, I mean like we had signs,
Consistency.
some that looked like they had dogs off of a leash running free, so people thought, oh, when I get to the park, I can let my dog just run, you know, free. And then others that had, you know, dogs on a leash on the picture on the sign. So we were trying to get a level of consistency with that, as well as go back and develop a sign for those that, you know, just a basic sign that was the same
Right.
sign for all the parks that did not permit dogs. So we didn't really change anything. We just sort of formalized with the identification at that park on what the policy was, if you will.
And another thing that, and you see it all the time, is Hartford, like I said, that's just a wild dog park.
Yeah.
So there are people actually up there that do walk dogs, small dogs on leashes. I think that if you, and this is just Billy Gallagher's opinion, I think that if you open it up to dogs at McCrone, you're going to have an influx of people because it is a beautiful trail, just like you said, I agree. But they're going to be down there walking their dogs. You have kids playing balls being thrown all over the place. Who knows? You guys, no question about it. I know the two of you are total responsible dog owners. Not everybody is. Not everybody. And I can guarantee you that there's a ton of people that just go out, buy a brand new rescue dog. You know, they're doing the right thing. They bring it to the park and this dog goes nuts. Just, you know,
We want the
scares
dogs
the hell out
on
of you.
leashes and we want the hours mitigated.
And didn't you say that about Garrett Avenue too?
Well,
Canal?
Garrett Avenue
But
changed
they're-
their
but they're not on
hours
leashes,
to
you
not.
just said it.
Right, they are,
There's a
and-
sign that says
But you
leashes,
just
but
said-
people don't do it.
Yeah.
Exactly, that's my point.
But we'll want
I
our
rest my
hours
case.
limited.
Just to clarify though, the code is under control. There's nothing in the township code currently that says a dog must be on a leash.
There is a leash law, Tam.
Yeah,
there is
they're
a
not
leash law.
relevant to the parks.
Not to the parks, no,
Right,
it doesn't
but
say
un-
that, but it should.
But within
They
the
should
parks, the
coincide.
way the code is written on the parks is that the dog must be under control. There's no definition.
That's right. You went through this before.
Yeah, we did. We talked
did,
about
and
this.
and we looked at what parks were dog friendly. I mean, we didn't make decisions about to make this a dog friendly park that wasn't, or vice versa or anything. But we did sort of have a review of what the current status is. I mean, again, I think the request, I mean, I appreciate the proposed limitations you're putting on yourself. I mean, I think that's helpful. I mean, you know, I mean, we're not going to make a formal recommendation. My sense is it's a brand new park, to just give it some time before we start having dogs in there and revisit the issue later. So that's my opinion on it. And I think that was sort of the sense we came out of our last meeting on.
I had a question about what type of hours restrictions would you envision?
My suggestion would be, you know, before 8 o'clock in the morning, you know, that you'd be allowed to walk your dog over there. And then a half an hour, like before sunset, you would be able to go in. Because especially in the summertime, the bulk of the playing is during the day with kids and all of that. And, so in the morning before 8 o'clock, if people wanted to take a walk around, with their dog, that was my feeling. I don't know if you agreed with that.
Yeah, and I do, because I have a lot of young parents who go to Clemacrone, especially now, because it's new, and they get their kids there, they like to get them all played out before noon, and so I think the restriction in the morning, I'm thinking 8:30, maybe 9 o'clock,
8:30 or
depending.
9, yeah, right.
And
Okay.
then dusk, because most of the children are in school.
Yes.
So
It's really empty there during the day. I live across the
Mostly.
street, almost across the street. I live on the corner of Conestoga and Good Shepherd. And so I look over at it on a slight angle, and it's empty. Even now, as a new park, maybe 1 or 2 people in early morning. I mean, it's really, really empty. And then in midday, it's kind of empty because especially older kids are all in school.
Make a comment from another situation, not Radnor right now, but another place I'm involved with dogs and so on. The park is established basically for, and again, I'm a dog lover, okay? For human people using the park, kids and adults. In another situation where I encountered it, a particular child has an aversion to animals, okay? The kid flipped out, okay, because the dog came near, not attacking, but this child was autistic, could not handle an animal around there. So my question is, the park exists for the kids, first and foremost, and we can't control the humans that are going to use the park. So that you're going to take a full spectrum of kids coming in to use that park. Some who love animals, some who don't, who have this aversion to them, that it creates a problem, whether the dog's on a leash or not, okay?
But that's
So-
why
was
we're
my
talking
next
about
point.
limited
So-
hours.
I know, but then you gotta have someone who's gonna police that. Every time you put a rule in place, you're going to have somebody who's going to enforce that rule. So now we're going to say 8 o'clock, and prior to 8 o'clock, you can bring a dog in on a leash. The leash can't be a retractable leash, it has to be a leash of no more than 6 feet. So you get this whole list of rules that, first of all, if you put a sign up on it, and the sign's going to have to go on and on and on, listing all the caveats about using it. And then most importantly, you're going to have someone who's going to enforce that. Because if you don't have someone to enforce it, you might as well don't have a rule at all. So I thought we answered some of this in the past, and I know, I've been over to Hereford Parking. That's an unruly
That's
place
a
to be.
dog
in
That's a
park.
different kind of.
We
I
don't
know,
want
that
the
is,
We
dog.
don't
but
really want that.
But you don't want that, but we thought we were kind of covering a lot of needs of people in the township with the resources.
You do have the
that we have.
walking park 2 blocks away on Garrett Avenue. I
Well,
mean,
you know
do.
what, though, I do not want to go to that park for the very reason that I stated. Because I can't tell you, Hazel Grace, who's my dog, and my other dog, Tucker, I cannot tell you how many times dogs who were unleashed went right for their jugular.
But Tony,
And
what
being in the
happens?
middle-
What
Same
happens?
thing's
What
gonna happen
happens?
there.
It's exactly the same thing that's gonna happen in Crown. That's my
going to.
point.
Someone
It
has-
just
I think
started
if
out the
you-
same way, they had to
They
be
don't
on
have
leashes.
restricted hours to
I
now,
don't think
and we
that's
want
the
restricted
issue.
hours, and we want to give it a try. We want to give it a try. It should have a probationary period, and,
I mean,
Mary
you're not talking
Ann
two
and
different
Sylvia and Michael,
Groups of
We
people,
will
you're
be-
talking 2 blocks away, same dogs are gonna go to the same, they're gonna
I
do it.
do not want to go
No.
to Tenelfi.
I understand that, but they're gonna come down to you
And
then.
even though I don't use the field or necessarily want to go a lot to Clemacrone because I do walk my dog throughout the neighborhood, I think it would just be nice, as Mary Ann has experienced, to take the dog down the
Yeah.
trail at the walkway at dusk and go all the way to the end.
It's really pleasant. It's
pretty.
really nice. And there's nobody else there. The kids are not walking the trail.
No one's-
They're-
yeah, no
Kids are
one's
not
out.
doing
They're
that,
home.
they're not.
What is it, can I interrupt with a question? What is the difference? So I'm kind of regular on the Radnor Trail, and most of those dogs now, certainly I have not had a dog incident there in quite a long time, because when I do, I call somebody, because I think it's scary to have,
Well, I would
you
do
know,
that
some
too. I'd
animal,
call somebody,
you
right.
know, coming at you. But I found that on the trail, the dog owners are walking and the dogs are on a leash. And you know what? I'll cut a wide berth if I think the dog's a little too big for me. But otherwise, I think it's worked out okay. Why are dog owners not leashing their dogs in these other places?
There's
What is
a
it?
whole variety of
What's different about the trail? I guess is the question.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why they feel that maybe at that other park they can let them loose. I mean, maybe there's no sign that says,
If
you
they're
know,
on
it
the
says
trail, they're on a
absolutely.
straight shot, they've got their dog on a leash. They're there for a reason, they're there to get exercise, they're walking their dogs, that's what they do on the trail.
Okay,
If
but
they're in a
that's-
big park, this is
almost
good
every
for this dog, they can go run, they can do whatever, you know. and
Yeah,
that's what
I mean,
happens.
it's
That's
they treat
the
it more like the
difference.
beach.
Absolutely.
Almost every time I went to the old park to pick up the grandchildren from, you know, whatever, you know, the summer camp thing or whatever, there was somebody who would come from that street that backs up to the park and the other side, walking through that little entrance, letting their dog off the leash and letting them just run and whatever. Even though there were signs, you know, no dogs in the park. And I would confront people if they came anywhere as close to me. And they'd look at me like I was crazy. Why? You know, this is where my dog comes.
Right.
You know, so that's the attitude. And I'm hoping that those folks are not going to treat the new park the way they treated the old park. Because they, you know, whether there was a sign there or not, unless there was somebody to enforce
I
it,
don't
or
disagree.
someone to, you know, remind them that there's a sign, you know, look at the sign over there, or at least pick up after your dog if you're going to let them, but they don't, you know.
I believe, Mr. Gillen, you made the best point of all, is not everyone is a dog lover.
Right.
And, you know, like I said, if you got a park that you're letting it happen 2 blocks away, and then this
Yeah, but
park,
that's
I
not
think it's
fair.
just,
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's.
Because we
But
do
that's
allow,
the
I
problem.
just checked with Tammy, we do allow dogs on the Radnor Trail. If they're leashed, they can walk
Yep.
them. So if people are looking for that activity, correct?
Right, I mean,
They can walk them on there, because I've been on there a number of times. That's where I encountered a problem with the retractable leash. You know, if you're trying to run or jog on there and somebody's got a dog 12 feet out from you, that's probably a tripping hazard. But we don't prevent that from walking on that
Well-
trail. So you want to try and have a lot of things
Yeah.
for the township people to enjoy, and not everyone's going to have everything open to them. That's part of, I guess, community
But, you
living.
know, other communities and other places, certainly where I grew up, all the parks are open to people all the time with their dogs, and they don't seem to have horrendous problems. They've not stopped it, they continue to do it, so, you know, I know there are people that don't follow the rules. I get that, and I know that it can be dangerous with dogs if they let them run loose. My dog would not like it if a dog ran up to her, and she could be aggressive. I mean, and she would, if somebody came running at her, she would be aggressive, and I don't want that to happen. I
But did you
definitely
say
don't.
that is happening currently?
Right.
That-
Well, then, you know, if,
Because they're unlimited, they don't have hours, we are asking for limited hours.
Well, they did have hours limited for a long period of time.
In Tanel.
well,
And
what
it
if
worked
someone,
fine.
what
That
if
makes a
somebody went to
difference.
enforce it for a couple of weeks?
It's-
I know it's a pain, but what if someone went to Tanel Park and enforced it?
We don't have.
The manpower.
Yeah, I know it, I know you don't, but, you know, if it could be enforced for a week or two and you saw that and you said, you cannot do this, you're gonna be fined, you know, that would stop it. I mean, that would stop people, because if they got scared they were going to have to pay a fine for it, they would probably stop.
And that's what we're asking for, limited hours of the day, and definitely no time in
Off
which
leash, no
children, yeah,
off leash.
no time off leash, and no time really when children are there.
Yeah, I mean, the way I sort of viewed it is, you know, and I appreciate the proposal, is the rules of the parks are gonna get broken. It's just the way it is. if we said, if we put up a park, let's designate a park, and it's like absolutely no dogs on it, just not allowed, no dogs. There's gonna be dogs on that park. The rules are these, no matter how many signs, no matter how big, fancy neon, the rules are gonna get broken. The restrictions, if people see it as a dog park, is for certain hours, they're gonna come outside of those hours. People, if you say no dogs are allowed in a particular park, they're gonna come to that park anyway. I mean, I appreciate the restriction, and I appreciate what you're trying to do, and I see, and I think that's while it's a reasonable ask, I think residents are gonna break those restrictions no matter what you put on them. That's just my opinion. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, I just sort of see it as people are going to do that. And, you know, I sort of come back again to this as, you know, it's a brand new park, and I think at least while we're trying to make sure that the town, you know, to encourage people to be using it for the initial start here in the township, I think, I don't see a reason to change the policy. I don't know if you guys feel differently.
Well, one thing I think we do a good job in the township is providing a wide variety of experiences.
Right.
And I know many folks that love dogs. There are many that may not want to have a park experience, which includes dogs. I think we try to provide experiences for skateboarders and people who play basketball and other sports and want to take a walk in the park on a trail scenario. We have a number of vehicles for folks to walk their dogs in parks throughout the township, and I think that provides that experience. And I think some folks don't want to have that exposure, and we try to provide that experience in their places. I'm inclined to stick with the current policy. Although we're not voting tonight.
We're not voting, so I'll say this. Personally, I'm not a dog lover, I'm not a dog owner, okay? I don't get it, but anyway. My sister is, so it's something, it's wiring. Having said that, I think that you're right, Andy, when you say that if you have, you know, just because you have a sign doesn't mean people are going to obey it. But what the sign does give you is moral authority to go up to the abuser and say, excuse me, kindly, you're not supposed to have a dog in here after whatever, 8 o'clock, whatever your time is. And the person comes back with blah, blah, blah. So you take your phone out, you take a picture, you timestamp it, and you send it in. And just, you know, you self-police. So I guess in that way, I feel like if you have a sign, whatever might be decided, and whether it's now or a while from now, or some other park or this park, I think that as long as you've got something that's reasonable, that provides what you know, because honestly, I don't like dogs running around if I'm trying to be out and enjoy. I don't like it. And I particularly don't like it if they're not leashed and well under control. So, but if there's a sign that says your dog's got to be on a leash, boy oh boy, I will get very aggressive with people who have dogs bounding all over the place, and I will say, get that dog on a leash or I'm calling the police. And
Well, I mean, I agree with you. I
and
totally
so
agree with
I
you.
guess I say, I guess I feel
I
as
totally
if
agree.
you should be able to accommodate
Yeah.
both the dog walkers within a very restricted time period, because I think Andy's point and yours is well taken. On the other hand, I also appreciate the fact that there are plenty of people out there like me, and it's Billy,
Yeah.
who would rather have a dog-free experience. So, you know, I think we need to think about it a little more, but I do think signage, it gives you the moral authority as a
Yes,
civilian.
Absolutely.
And
To
I
not
agree
off.
with you, as a
Yeah.
dog lover.
Yeah.
I do not like it when dogs are off leash and they're running up to me. I
Yeah.
want those dogs under control.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
agree
know
with
what
that.
that dog's gonna do.
Of course not.
I
You
want
know,
that
you never
dog.
know.
Now,
And-
I know her dog, because our dogs are best friends. So if
Like, I don't get
Teddy,
that either, but go
Teddy
ahead.
runs up to me, if Teddy runs up to me, I know him.
Dog voting down in the
No,
township.
but
there.
no, I'm trying to
Teddy's a little corgi.
I'm trying to broker a compromise here.
I'm very impressed
So,
by it.
and my
I'm very
dog-
impressed by this. Moving on to the
I
next
just
piece
want to
of
comment that
correspondence,
somewhere next week, there's going to be a meeting of people getting together, friends of the Macron Park,
Right.
about, you know, yeah, and maybe through that, some policing could happen through that. Does that
I do
strike you as anything
I do
interesting?
caution you, though, about one comment that was made here, and again, history being on this board for a number of years. I caution you about the idea that signage provides some moral or way of saying to individuals that I'm going to confront you and say,
Confrontation is the worst thing.
somebody in,
Well,
who was,
these days,
really
yes.
if I
These
can
days
finish my
especially.
comment, somebody
Absolutely.
who was here earlier,
I know. Well, you gotta.
who was a
subtle, very
proponent
careful.
of having dogs in there, also brought the same comment that when she approached someone about the dog being there a few years ago, a gun was pulled on her.
In Clemacrone?
In Clem-
I'm not, I remember the story going on, whether it was there or was it down in another
there.
part.
No,
Was
we
it
would
for
have
others?
heard,
I
we
know.
No,
would
not
have heard about
recently,
that.
I'm talking
Yeah.
about a few years ago.
Never saw it.
Me either.
Okay.
No.
And
I
she
never
brought
saw
Probably
it.
it's Mel.
I'm not sure,
Very good.
but
Could have been.
one has to
It's
be
Clem
careful
Crowe.
I don't
when you
think it was
think
there.
that just by putting a sign up, that it's open game, that community members, you don't want to put community members, people who say, hey, I'm going to go up and say to that person, please, leash your dogs. I know what's going to happen. You're going to be calling the police to pull two adults apart from one another because somebody's going to say, who are you
Yeah,
to tell
well, you
me
do
what
it
to
out.
do?
I've done it. I mean, I've done it, and honestly, you know, and I don't do it unless they, you know,
do it in Garrett
blow
Hill?
me off.
Just
No,
saying.
Do
unless
that to people from Garrett.
unless I'm blown, you know, if I'm blown off, then I get mad because, like, look, I want to, you know, we have to be law abiding here. This is what the rules are. You're breaking them, and I have a problem with that. You
I
know,
agree.
please leash your dog. Most people will do. You know, frankly, most people will do it. They're like, oh, sorry, I didn't know. You know, you get that.
And just one other point that I deal with every single day, probably 4 calls a day. Some calls from people that I know very well, that like dogs on Barclayton, dogs on Browning, dogs on Garrett. You know anybody there? That defecate all over the place, and
Oh gosh,
they don't
that's
care.
another issue.
They don't care, and I mean, we didn't even touch that with walking on the trail in the park.
Yeah.
Because, again, you guys are responsible, I know that, I talk to you. But I also know the people that aren't. And they're gonna be the same people using that park as well. And the township guys have a name for it, where you enter off of Rockingham.
Uh-oh.
They have it called something alley, but that's what they call it, because that's what it is. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I have
You
not
can't
seen
even
it.
walk there.
We have Goose Poop
I have
Field at the
not
high
seen
school,
that.
just so
I
you
know.
know.
Yes, exactly.
No, but I
We
have
don't have
to-
any more willows, do we?
No, we don't.
No, we don't.
I just feel that if you don't want to vote on this today.
They can't.
We can't,
Right,
they don't
because
have
of
a
the
quorum.
quorum. I really do feel very passionately about this. I know we've heard the worst case scenarios, but I think the worst case scenario is like at that end of the spectrum, and the other is at the other end of the spectrum, and we're kind of in between.
Yeah.
And I really feel very strongly that this should be revisited and reconsidered. Mitigated hours, limited hours, and definitely policing, because I mean, not that I want to go there every day of the week, but I think at some point in time, I would like to go there with my dog all the way to the end of the park, you know, where it's adjacent to the woods, and have that experience. For the most part, I'm walking my dog 2 miles through the neighborhood, and I do tell Bill over the last, I don't know, 6, 7 years about all the dog excrement that people leave. Now the new thing is having the bags of food
Leave
and
the bags
throwing
out.
them on people's
Yeah,
lawns.
leaving the bags.
What? Yes.
Yeah. Every
Yes.
time, every day when I walk,
Yeah.
I get to the neighborhood, there's
We
at
do.
least one.
Well, see,
where
but
we
I
walk.
walk up.
And just for the record,
I never
before I
see
go,
it.
ladies,
What?
I love dogs.
We know.
I do, just so you
Yeah,
know
well,
that.
I guess we've said
I know I
our,
grew up with them.
Okay.
Thanks.
well, we've said we've said it over and over again,
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
hope you will consider or
Certainly.
think about some of the proposals.
Certainly.
We
Please.
appreciate
Thanks
that.
Thanks for your
and,
passion.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
Or if nothing
okay.
else, since there's supposed to be no dogs in the park, if there's any way of kind of patrolling during hours when, especially folks in the neighborhood, let their dogs into the park, that it be reinforced that this really is, primary purposes for human use. And your dog is not welcome in the park currently.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing, you know, because the park is just reopened, and I think because of the publicity, a whole new group of people are gonna be using that that have not in the past. I think it's hard to say, just use historically what you guys observed and what, you know, when I took my kids there and things like that is sort of what the use is gonna be. I think no one's gonna really know what the typical average use of this park's gonna be until down the road, until we see a November, until we see a December, until we see a June when the kids are using it now. So, but no, I appreciate you guys coming forward and providing it. And like I said, I think it's you know, what you're asking for, it looks at it in a very specific way, which I think is good. But
And the other thing, the three of us are very active in the community.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem talking to my neighbors who use the park and have little children or actually going to the park and while it's in use and asking them how they would feel if this scenario were to be allowed. How would they feel speaking for themselves and how their children might react, but also, again, limited hours. Because I can appreciate not all little children like dogs. They can be very scary because children are this high and dogs can be this high, and that's intimidating. So we're not suggesting that dogs be allowed leashed in the park during hours when most little children and children are in there.
yeah.
One point I just wanted to make is that, thanks for coming tonight, I appreciate it.
Thank
I'm glad
you,
guys are
Tabby.
enjoying the park. I'm not, the one thing I would want to make a determination on is just exactly what would put that decision-making on this board. Because, and ultimately, that might be something that may have to carry on to the Board of Commissioners
Right.
ultimately. So even though, you know, as a
Yeah.
fundamental step, they may make a recommendation, you know, in one direction or another, or on, you know, narrowed hours or what have you, ultimately, that may have to be something that would have to
Yes.
go before the BOC and then kind of carried out through there in a public
Do
forum.
we come back and revisit you again another time, or do we just wait and hear, if anything, when you discuss, or how do we?
I mean, our next meeting, I think, is the 9th of November, and then I think we're at the 14th of December, I believe, and that's our schedule. I mean, we can't, like as you guys observed, we can't make a motion on if you want to come back and bring the issue up again. I mean, we did, like I said, you know, when we have a more full body, maybe people will feel differently about it, because when we discussed it last meeting, when we did have a quorum, we didn't make a motion on it, but there wasn't the hours restrictions or any of that was discussed. So that's sort of, I think, where it would start with us. I imagine, I'm only hypothesizing, that if you went to the Board of Commissioners, they would say, well, what did the Park and Rec Board say? And, you know,
And
we've had a
also, was there any
conversation.
community participation? Because Mary Ann and I spoke to our neighbors and got as many as we could to come, you know, who feel
No, we
passionate.
appreciate you tripled our usual attendance.
Well, good, we can bring more people.
I always welcome that. So, you know, whatever, you know, this is a forum, you know, for people to come and to discuss about the parks. We've always been open, and we always encourage public participation from as many or as people who ever show up. So,
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your efforts. Thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
is there a motion to welcome Canada?
I have a motion.
Anything
You
else?
know what, I am so sorry I was late.